Sorry, I was muted there for a second. I've been having incredible mic problems. I was on the report earlier today and I forgot to turn my mic on. So it's just like my MacBook Pro Mac. But thankfully, on this show, I do have a producer. So I mess up less. Welcome tonight. It's Thursday, State of Play on Mint Press News. I am your host, Greg Stoker, and it's been 3 weeks of straight up insanity, like every day. The news cycle has been something more. Now there's a war breaking out in Lebanon, and it's a really strategically stupid move for Israel to be making. But, you know, they're downhill with no brakes, and they're just going to do whatever they're going to do, including hitting targets near a Russian air base, which is great. It's great for us. It's great for humanity. I guess their whole mantra is to escalate to de-escalate or escalate into de-escalation, which I suppose would happen. Things would eventually de-escalate once humanity is a smoking pile of ash. So from that perspective, the long goal, I guess they are, escalation to de-escalation does work. So tonight we're going to be talking about the invasion of Lebanon and also talking to a really fun guest. This is going to be a more lighthearted episode, I think. Insofar as the subjects that we cover can be considered light. But we're about to go into the weekend, and we're just gonna see what happens. And first, we have to do the Patreon plug. Okay, we are a completely independent newsroom, and we are demonetized on like every platform. So if you want to support what we do here, not just this show, but all the other journalists that work for Mint Press News, consider dropping us $5 a month. We know that you are being nickeled and dimed to death in this stage of late finance capitalism. But if you have some disposable income and you want to help out, that's great. We really appreciate it. But at the end of the day, we're just glad you're here. So if you feel like it, like, share, subscribe, comment. It pushes this up the algorithm with engagement and gets out to more people. So thank y'all. Glad you're here. Now, to get into the episode proper. So there's no concrete operational plan for the invasion of Lebanon beyond a murky idea of dismantling Hezbollah infrastructure along the border and the establishment of a military buffer zone to allow the displaced residents of northern Israel to return to their homes. What will be the depth of the invasion? Quote, how much will be cleared? We don't know, said Yaakov Amidror, a former military general and Israeli national security advisor. It will be decided depending on the achievements on the ground. I'm going to repeat the whole quote from a former national security advisor. What will be the depth of the invasion? Question mark. How much will be cleared? Question mark. It will be decided depending on the achievements on the ground. So, as someone who spent his most formative years of his life fighting in the nebulous American project that was the global war on terror, this particular language is not unfamiliar to me. The battle, like we say things like, the battlefield environment is dynamic. Mission requirements will flex to compensate for an evolving tactical situation. Yeah, you got all that? Does it mean anything? This is reductive, but we all know how the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan turned out in the end. They were termed forever wars because there were no concretely definable and therefore achievable goals beyond the initial success. At the beginning of the Afghan war was to take the Taliban out of power. Boom, that happened fast. But now, for some reason, we're going to occupy Afghanistan. And then you're stuck with a situation where you don't have any achievable goals. Just like, oh, we're going to defeat the Iraqi army. Okay, now what? So that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this whole invading southern Lebanon, because it's just too hauntingly reminiscent of the GWAT. So Israel's Lebanon invasion will be no different. Challenging terrain for an invading force, an embedded enemy who will fight and die for their land, dwindling political goodwill on the international stage and community, all with the added wrinkle of the IDF being far less capable, disciplined, and powerful as the United States military. The invasion is hopeless and will most likely follow a similar trajectory to the strategic defeat that Israel endured during the 2006 invasion, for the simple reason that they have not updated their military doctrine or tactics, techniques, and procedures in any substantive way since the mid 2000s. So, what are we seeing now? Same thing we saw then: an over reliance on bombing campaigns, a lack of maneuverability and integration between combat arms like infantry, artillery, armor, all compensated for by a heavy information operations campaign to portray an image of defeat for Hezbollah and an image of absolute victory for Israel by capitalizing on short-term tactical victories. The assassination of Nasrallah is the most recent example of this propaganda push. And then there is a perennial systemic problem of the Israeli Defense Force itself. Despite Israel's militarized gun-toting society, their army fundamentally lacks cohesive discipline, competence, training, and experience. It is, on a fundamental level, a draft-based conscript army with the military experience of the Corps of Reservists amounting to a meager 2 years. 2 years of experience. They are closer to civilians than they are to professional soldiers. To really explore this last point within the context of the Lebanon invasion, we are joined tonight on State of Play by former United States Marine Corps drill instructor, Sergeant Zuleyka Morales, who volunteered to work with the Israeli army. As someone who was raised a Pentecostal Zionist in Puerto Rico, the IDF's complete lack of discipline and military bearing is what began her process of unraveling all the constructed myths of the Israeli state, beginning with the myth of their extreme military competence. So, how can they possibly hope to prevail in as challenging an operational environment as southern Lebanon if they can't even complete the simple task of wearing boots, not flip-flops, to morning formation? Okay, but before we get to that, I just want to show you guys that we're living in an upside-down universe. An upside-down universe wherein Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, the mercenary captain of the United Arab Emirates, and a guy who vocally wants to recolonize Africa because they, quote, can't govern themselves, says something actually based, because the world's insane. I just want to show you the guys this, because this is his assessment of Lebanon and the situation in Lebanon and Israel's relationship with the United States. And things are so bad that, like, Eric Prince is now agreeing with us. He's like one of the worst people.
Hey.
So he has his own podcast, and that's how he opens it. Guys, like, you guys think I listen to metal. This is not metal. This is called butt rock. Anyways, this is how they open it.
Hey, everybody. This is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. A new development.
Yeah, you thought I was going to have to make you listen to Netanyahu again. Nope. I got a whole nother piece of work lined up for you.
And the war in Israel has just unfolded.
All right, so he's going to talk about Lebanon.
The IDF is moving ahead on the ground. Can you give us sort of a lay of the land and what's really going on?
Well, what we think is going on is the reason there's like 70,000 Israelis evacuated from living in the north because they were constantly receiving harassment fire, rockets coming across the border from Lebanese Hezbollah positions. Now, and also because of the Syrian civil war, there was a lot of Shia party factions, even some Lebanese Hezbollah that had moved around to the Syrian side, and even some Afghan Shia that they've hired as mercenary forces on the Syrian border, further encircling Israel. So they are trying to certainly clean out the ability for these Iranian proxies to fire rockets, loitering munitions, etc.
I mean, he's not wrong about hiring mercenaries. That does happen.
Yeah. And driving a huge part of the north of Israel away from the border.
I mean, he should know. He is the mercenary captain of UAE.
I don't see them doing a massive full-in ground assault. I think they'll try to pick it apart and destroy their supply locations with aerial strikes. The amount of casualties they would sustain with a massive ground offensive would be very, very difficult. The last time they did that, in 2006, it did not go well for the IDF because of the amount of Cornet missiles, RPGs, and a lot of ambush sites in very dense forests with rugged terrain and a lot of tunnels. Made it tough going. The Israelis lost a lot of forces, both vehicles, aircraft, etc. And now you add to the mix of loitering munitions, which is still an ongoing problem, small kamikaze drones.
I mean, none of this is wrong. I hate the guy. I totally agree with him.
I don't see them having the appetite for that if they think they can get it done from the air.
Yeah, yes, he is an ex-Navy SEAL officer. That is true, Sean.
Yeah, in fact, you're exactly right. The IDF issued a statement, Eric, where they said that.
That is correct.
Okay.
I mean, they've clearly.
This is where it gets weird.
Done a massive decapitation effort between the pagers, the walkie-talkies, and the bunker bombing. I heard that they hit Nasrallah's bunker with 80-some bombs. So literally pancaked upon pancaked the building over top of it and all the multi-layers of bunkered locations underneath that building in Harat Harek. So they did that with a thoroughness that definitely sends a message.
Yeah, it definitely sends a message when you murder an entire block of civilians too, I guess. I wouldn't expect Eric Prince to ever bring that up, though.
But they still have more rocket locations, and especially in light of real damage that America sustained.
This is where it gets upside down.
Just this last weekend, with massive flooding, you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people without power, cut off.
He's referring to Hurricane Helen that destroyed the lower eastern seaboard in the United States.
Off, roads annihilated, no potable water, no energy left. And to have just sent $8 billion to Ukraine and another $8 billion to Israel, that does not sit well with me, or does not sit well with, I think, most tax-paying Americans. Not our problem, and we should not keep getting dragged back into the Middle East.
Well, at least he's saying that. But then again, he's the guy who did come up with a plan to flood the Gaza tunnels with seawater and destroy all potential for like agriculture going forward, because you're literally salting the fields when you do that. So, I mean, even voices on the far right in America, far right imperialists like Eric Prince, he is an imperialist. He wants to recolonize Africa. He controls mercenary armies for the Gulf states. Even if he's publicly saying time to cut ties with Israel, that's interesting. I just wanted to let everybody know that's a dynamic that's happening right now on the right. So, yeah, will the IDF be insane enough to do a ground invasion? Well, there's another aspect of this that I brought up in the beginning, a lack of discipline. So the interview we did tonight with the former Marine drill instructor, I think that's a pretty good segue, and let's get in. All right, y'all. So tonight on State of Play at Mint Press News, we are interviewing a former United States Marine and IDF volunteer, Zuleyka Morales. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So as this war in Lebanon is kicking off and there are unconfirmed reports of the IDF bombing a Russian base in Syria, it seems like the dimensions of this conflict are getting really out of control. Thank you so much for coming on, because it's very rare that we get to discuss like the inner workings or the insider perspective to the Israeli Defense Force. I know their rank structure is like different from ours, and their entire like SOP and like tactics are different. I suspect, and their entire military culture is different. And hopefully by talking to you, it can inform myself and some of the viewers about the internal decision-making processes that are going on, at least on a very ground level. So first of all, you were in the Marine Corps, and when we were having you on, one of our guys scrubbed the internet and found picture view from Paris Island, drill sergeant. So before we get into it, I assume you did a lot of yelling in that job capacity.
Something like that. You could call it that.
So I guess, first of all, before we get into the IDF, because you joined the IDF after the Marines, correct?
Well, I didn't actually join the IDF. I volunteered with a program that they have where you're not required to join the IDF. You just kind of volunteer working with them and working in a base for a limited time.
Oh, is that different from contracting?
Yes. They
Okay.
have specific groups within the IDF because they actually require certain people. It's within the guidelines that they have of manpower to count volunteers that are basically working party to move some of the stuff around because they don't have enough troops
Oh, they don't have
to
enough
do it.
enough logistical support.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. So first of all, can you tell us about your service in the Marine Corps? However, which way you want to
Of
begin?
course, of
Yeah.
course. So I joined the Marine Corps in 2007. I was a helicopter mechanic, organizational level mechanic, a CH-53 mechanic. So I worked on helicopters. For the first 5 years, I worked for HMX-1, which is the president's helicopters. I worked on Marine One, so under the Bush administration and the Obama administration. After 5 years there, I got my presidential service badge, and then I went on to drill instructor school where they taught me how to scream at people.
Yeah.
And then I trained Marines. I trained recruits to be Marines. So
Yeah. So I went through Army basic infantry training. I'm not sure really how the Marine Corps process works. And just as a side note of curiosity, does um like infantry boot camp in the Marine Corps is different from like regular boot camp, or is it like all the same?
so all boot camp is the same
Okay.
across the board, male and female. And
Mhm.
then how it works is when you go to the next training, if you are not infantry, you go to Marine combat training. If you are infantry, you go to School of Infantry SOI.
Okay. All right. So it's separate. All right. And how long were you in the Corps?
I was in the Marine Corps for 7.5 years.
7.5 years. Okay.
Mhm.
So you got out around what year?
2014.
2014. And so why did you, I mean, we all have the story about why we enlisted, but why did you enlist during the global war on terror?
I well, I honestly enlisted because a recruiter showed up to my house.
Mhm.
My cousin wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps. He actually is still in the Marine Corps. And I was the only one that had internet. So I looked it up. I was like, yeah. And I actually searched every branch. I went Navy.com, Air Force.com, Army.com, and kind of like filled out the little questionnaire. And the Marine Corps recruiter showed up to my house. And I was like, oh, this seems legit. I don't have anything else to do. I guess I could do this. And I just joined the Marine Corps.
Okay. Was it for benefits or just to get out of a certain situation or paid for
Yeah,
college?
at the time I was living in Puerto Rico and
Mhm.
there wasn't much for me to do. I didn't want to go to school. I was kind of like, oh, well, I can serve my country. I can get out of here. I can travel. I can do cool stuff.
Yeah. And I should just let you know for the audience that Mo and I actually met at the Netanyahu UN protest in Washington D.C. So it was a fun time. I walked in really crappy boots for like 12
Like
miles.
10, yeah, it was
Yeah,
like 12 months. Yep.
yeah. So, anyways, you decided
Greg
to
is a tank.
yeah, I'm a tank. So we know where you stand now, but after you got out of the military, you again joined the IDF volunteer force. I'm not really sure how it works because I know that the U.S. military uses contractors, but it seems like this was somehow different. And Josephine Gilbo, who's been on our show a couple of times, sent me your awards or your thank you letter from the volunteer
Mhm.
services seen right here. How does that function differently from the U.S. contractor services that do logistical support for the United States military?
Right. So the way that it worked is I went through an organization called Volunteers for Israel.
Okay.
Now, remember, at the time, I'm fresh out of the military, still sipping the Kool-Aid.
Hmm.
Like, I want to learn more. I want to see how elite these people are.
Hmm.
And so I had actually ran into an IDF soldier on the Upper West Side. Started talking to him, told him I was a Marine, all that, and he directed me to Volunteers for Israel. Now, Volunteers for Israel has a branch that's specifically for volunteering with the IDF, which is called SAR-L. So
Sorry.
with SAR-L, you submit an application, you tell them, oh, you want to volunteer on base with the IDF soldiers, and they give you just some paperwork to fill out, ask you a couple of questions, interview you. Oh, why do you want to go to Israel? Are you Jewish? All those things. And then they give you some dates. You can do 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or up to a month, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose 3 weeks or a month. And they kind of gave me a range of dates. You can go from this date to this date. And I picked a date, and then I just went over there.
Did like some sort of Christian beliefs, some sort of like evangelical beliefs or Zionistic beliefs also drive your decision? Because you're coming from Puerto Rico. I don't know if you're Jewish or not, but I know there's an entire Christian detachment in the IDF. So was that a part of it?
Yes, and this is actually a point that I wanted to really touch up on when we spoke. I was raised, well, let me just start. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
So I was heavily, heavily indoctrinated in Pentecostal, evangelical, religious. Uh, I grew up in a Pentecostal home, and we went to church every day of the week, basically. I went to church every day. My dad was a pastor, and we had this, maybe not necessarily Zionism, but I definitely was instilled in me at a very early age that Israel were the chosen people and Israel was God's people and things of that nature. So I always had this context in the back of my mind, regardless if I believe it or not. That is what was ingrained all throughout my life. So yes.
And we have a lot of people who aren't who watch this show who aren't familiar with the different denominations of Christianity. So I guess a basic overview is, and you can flesh it out a little bit more for the audience if you want. The Pentecostal church is a Protestant Christian church that emphasizes a direct experience of God through baptism and the Holy Spirit. And you believe that faith should be more like experiential, not just found through ritual or thinking, perhaps believing that the Holy Spirit fills believers with the strength to live a Christian life, and that this experience is revealed through the gifts of the Spirit, like speaking in tongues, prophecy, healing. Is that correct?
Yep. Denouncing like things from the secular world, wearing skirts, no jewelry, things of that nature.
Yeah.
A lot of things from like the Old Testament also.
Okay. So prophecy was a big part of that.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's where Israel comes in. All right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you were still kind of in that mindset after the Marine Corps and trying to volunteer for Israel for that reason, kind of, or?
Absolutely. And I was also very curious because I'd heard throughout all my life that these were God's chosen people, and obviously they're America's biggest ally. So I think I'm mostly very curious as to what the hype is all about. Like they must be doing something very special. If everyone is picking them and everyone is choosing them and they are the chosen ones.
Right.
Very curious to see a lot of the sites also biblically, let's see what this is about. The Dead Sea, the Sea of Galilee, where Paul was prisoner. A lot of those places I wanted to see with my own eyes what it was like.
Right. And so you got there with this volunteer organization. And what was your experience on the ground working with the IDF? Because you wanted to see if these guys were as elite as everyone says they were.
Come to find out.
Yeah.
Come to find out. So initially when I got there, and I also just want to say this, initially when I got there, I was also very curious to be as close to Gaza as possible. Because Gaza was one of those places that everybody talked about, but capped off at location. Like no one spoke what happened there. They would just speak of like Gaza being an issue or Gaza being a problem or the people in Gaza. But no one went into detail on like why that was or anything like that. So before I got there and when I got there, I specifically requested that I wanted to be as close to Gaza as possible. But they told me I wasn't allowed. They were like, oh no, we've already set up where you're going to be volunteering, so we're not going to have you there. So I was actually near Beersheba, which wasn't that far. It was like maybe 45 minutes from Gaza, maybe an hour from Gaza. But what I found was not an elite force.
Yeah.
I was immediately from the moment, and mind you, also with the context of I just got done with the drill field. I'm
Yeah.
still pivoting at my corners.
Yeah.
I'm still I'm still telling people to walk faster. So I get there, so I get there, and there's just well, for starters, all the gear that was there was American hand-me-downs. And
Yeah.
that immediately was crazy to me. I was like, wow, I know we supported them and they were our ally, but I didn't know it was all of this.
Mhm.
So I just started realizing things like that. That their demeanor about everything they did was very careless, also
Yeah.
infallible. The way, for example, one of the I think it was the second or third day because I wrote about it actually. One of the second or third day we did like morning colors
Mhm.
and sung the tikva or whatever it's called, something like that, like the hymn. And there was dudes in uniform but with flip flops. I'm losing my mind.
Yeah, because as a Marine drill instructor, like you'll go off on one if you see hands in pockets. Flip flops are a whole nother thing.
Flip flops, not on time. That's when the walls really started to fall. Of like, just because you're blind to a reality doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah.
And I think when I started realizing this and recognizing this is when I started to challenge what I already knew. Like maybe what I know isn't what I know. Maybe there's more.
Yeah.
So that was definitely an experience.
You know what? That's how kind of the Israel propaganda. Because I grew up as a white guy in Texas. I wasn't involved in evangelical Christianity at all, but I still like had friends that were like Zionists and whatever. And you hear like, oh, the Israeli military is like super badass. And then when I started getting more into military literature when I was in the Army, I read this 2006 report from the Combined Combat Center of Combined Arms Studies at Fort Leavenworth, Kentucky, about how the IDF just got absolutely trounced in 2006. And one of the quotes was the officers and NCOs were, quote, unprepared to fight a real war. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, well, if the Pentagon's releasing this literature, maybe I should listen to it. And we've seen since like the onset of October, where their lack of operational security, their lack of discipline, it's just kind of like it kind of makes sense that this is how it's going. And
Mhm.
I was wondering what you were going to say, because the Iranian missile attack happened yesterday. About 24 hours ago, and we were seeing some like footage, and like we took rocket attacks all the time in Afghanistan, which is what you do as an illegal occupying force. You're going to eat rounds, but I've never seen anything like this. Like these are uniformed, weaponed soldiers running to a bomb shelter like this. Yeah. So is that where like you seeing this complete distance between like the discipline of the Marine Corps and what's going on in the Israeli Defense Forces? And that's kind of where the unraveling started happening, would you say, before you even started getting into the Palestinian occupation apartheid stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, just their demeanor and how they carried themselves alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing for context. I was reading a comment on one of the posts online, and it was like, oh, you guys should be uh I don't know, shouldn't be feeling this way about civilians. And it's like we have to remember that the entire or most of the population in Israel is required to serve in their military.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an entire population, they should at least know how to operate in a different manner than that.
Yeah.
Basic training will do things to you or will teach you things that you're going to have for the rest of your life, but you're still behaving in this way.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling because their entire society is so militarized, but there's not this like military discipline instilled into it.
Exactly.
I don't get it. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, you were there, you were working with them.
I don't. I mean, I don't. What are my thoughts on what exactly?
Like how they could be so militarized, but like so
What?
like non-cognizant of military matters, like unable to be like, hey, we're actually like losing in Gaza. We're actually like losing in Lebanon because like we're not disciplined. Like we don't know how to achieve combined arms between infantry, uh, armored, and artillery. Like, how do they
Right.
not know these things?
I think they're just overly dependent on the aid and
Mm.
what they receive rather than what they can produce.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, here we have a gazillion bombs and brand new fighter jets and this, but when it comes to ground operations, they have no skills. And it's a I mean, they're definitely bred to dismiss the Palestinian people as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and they're bred to hate, but they're not. I don't even know how to explain it really. I don't know how you can have such a militarized society, bunkers across the street, all of this stuff, but still manage to behave in that way. I don't understand it.
Yeah. So when did you start getting wise to the plight of the Palestinians then?
Well, I think during multiple experiences, I won't go into detail with like every little experience that I had while I was volunteering, but it was like Tetris. It was like little parts would line up and then one line would fall. And I was like, that's kind of racist. And little things would happen like that. Little racist comments over here, disregard for Palestinian lives over there, not even saying the word Palestinian, calling them Arabs, calling them a problem, being dismissive, treating them as a nuisance. But I think what really, really irked me was the fact that at one point I asked, like, why can't I go to Gaza? I want to go to Gaza. I want to go see it. I don't want to go in there, but I want to see it. And they're like, oh no, you can't, you can't, you can't. And for me, and maybe you feel this like in the military. In the military, say if you're gonna break the rules, you better know the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So that if somebody comes to check you, you're gonna say, well, order blah 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 says. They couldn't tell me why I couldn't go to Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay. After volunteering, I came back. I was like, all right, whatever. I started reading a book about it's called War Against All Puerto Ricans.
Mm-hmm.
I started reading that book and I started seeing parallels, showing the flag illegal, trying to exterminate people via whatever the case may be, ethnic cleansing, things of that nature. And I decided that that same winter, that same Christmas, I would go back to Israel, but then I wanted to visit West Bank. Like if I can't go to Gaza, I need at least need to go inside West Bank. And that is what changed my life. And that is what changed everything for me when I went to West Bank.
Yeah. Just seeing the police state, the militarized police state, the checkpoints. What was
The
your
turnstiles, the roads that you can walk on as a tourist, but Palestinians can't walk on. The air feels different.
yeah.
And I've been and for a little bit of context, which I'm not exactly comparing the two,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been to a concentration camp. I went to Dachau concentration camp in 2012, because again, I wanted to see it for myself. And it's insane to me that just past these walls, so many things can go on and people just look the other way. And when I went into West Bank, that's exactly what I thought. As I'm walking through the turnstiles, as they're checking my ID, as they're checking my passport, as I'm asking where to go, I literally feel like I stepped into a concentration camp where people are just treated completely different based off of their ethnicity. And that was completely crazy to me.
So how long were you in West Bank?
I was in West Bank for about a day. I
Yeah.
went to the Church of Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing like the little tours. I went with my one of my best friends who's Palestinian. Saw a couple of Palestinians and stuff like that. They asked us where we were from. I said Puerto Rico, all that stuff. So, but uh, it was. I just couldn't believe the drastic contrast between Israel and West Bank. That's what really shocked me.
Yeah. It's almost like it's apartheid. So Um, I guess it only took like one day for you to realize, like, oh, this is totally beyond the pale. So when did you start getting into like activism? Again, we met at a protest.
Yes. I started, what really changed things for me was the George Floyd, what
Mhm.
happens to George Floyd. After that, I mean, there's this invisible barrier between the things that we see on TV and on our phones and what actually happens in real life. And what happens is a lot of times we see things and we're like, well, since I don't know anybody that's happened to, or since it hasn't happened to me, then it's easily dismissed or easy to not think about it. But when I saw that, it sparked this rage within me. Like I can't believe that's being broadcasted. And he just killed him right there. Like we all saw it. He's dead now. And the people trying to say, oh, this happened. So I think after that, after going to a protest, after seeing what the police was capable of, which we saw at the march, where it's this complete disregard. And I even mentioned it to one of the cops that was there. I was like, aren't you supposed to protect and defend me? Please explain to me how you're doing that.
Yeah, and, we're really witnessing the imperial boomerang because the NYPD has an office in Israel where they send their people to learn the techniques that the IDF uses to enforce apartheid and occupation on Palestinians, and it boomerangs back to us. Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's why like that's why we have so much interlap in between like the pro-Palestine movement and the Stop Cop City movement and like BLM and stuff because it's coming for us all. Like that's
Hmm.
that's what I
Exactly.
yeah, that's what I tried to explain to like these white people in Texas. Like, hey man, it's gonna work its way up the ladder, starting with the most marginalized people, and you're not rich enough to escape it. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And it just goes to show the rules can change at any time.
Mhm.
The rules have been changing constantly. You might be safe right now, but what's to say in a year you're part of the problem?
Yeah, there will come a time under authoritarianism where race and class doesn't really matter. Everyone's just like an enemy of the state if you step out of line.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
I guess now that we're kind of wrapping up, how do you see in general like does Israel, do you think, in your estimation, have the capacity to wage three separate military actions: Gaza, West Bank, northern Lebanon, and now retaliate against Iran?
Did you see the video of how scared they were right before invading Lebanon? I
Yeah.
need to know.
Wait,
They're
wait,
like
which video?
praying.
Oh,
They're like
the prayer. Yeah,
praying. They're praying, but a lot of them, some were praying, but a lot of them weren't praying. A lot of them were like looking down. They're not prepared. That's a no amount of funding will prepare that army for what their objectives are. And it's like you said in many videos, they didn't defeat Hamas. They're not. It's. I don't see them getting anywhere, honestly. And I'm surprised that it's come to this, and that the West is creating consent through propaganda for these atrocities that are committed every single day. It doesn't make sense to me.
yeah. Well, so what's next for you? You're doing some media rounds. That's exciting. You were just on AJ Plus.
Yeah.
What message are you trying to get out there?
Um, I guess I thought about this last night when you contacted me, and there's just when it comes to times like this, especially after a year of genocide, there must come a time where we start getting back to like fundamentals and think in very basic forms. And it's going to take all of us to wake up and really realize what is happening and how we're all being affected. That's just the truth of it all. Because the earth isn't going to be able to, like, it's sucking up 80,000, like, however many tons of bombs. Like, it's not good for any of us at all, period. Not good for us. So I would say I had an argument with one of the leaders of when I was volunteering in Israel.
Hmm.
And the way I explained it to her is probably my message to anyone that hears what I had to say. I was trying to explain to her how she was biased, how I was trying to not be biased, and all that. My message is if the roles were reversed, and Gaza was full of Israelis, I would still want a ceasefire.
Mhm.
If the roles were completely reversed, I would still want a ceasefire. I would still want the bloodshed to stop. I would still want the bombs to stop. I would still want children to stop suffering. That's my message.
Yeah. And I'm about to speak at this thing in Houston tomorrow about like resistance and stuff. And my message to people like former vets who are like still like supporting Israel no matter what and still believe in the word like terrorist. I was just like, okay, so like what if you grew up in Gaza with a 40% unemployment rate, couldn't find a job, they do the mowing the grass where they bomb people randomly, detain people during peaceful protests, they like air hole kids with sniper rifles. Yeah, but you grew up as a white dude, upper middle class white dude in Texas, and you volunteered to go into Ranger Regiment, where you knew you were going to go straight into the shit. But yeah, I'm sure you would have been totally chill if you were born in Gaza and you would have been like a baker or something. Like that totally makes sense. So that's the avenue I take with vets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if, and if they saw them as at the same level of humanity as they see themselves, they'd be like, huh, that makes sense. But,
Exactly. Like
they,
you can't possibly put them on equal playing grounds. Like one is the occupying force and the other is resisting.
yeah.
That's as basic as it gets.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think this was a great and enlightening discussion. Former former drill sergeant Morales. I guess we'll see you at the next action in New York City. I'm not sure when.
Saturday.
But, Saturday. Oh crap! I'm doing something in Houston Saturday. But
Yes, I saw that. Good luck.
the next one. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Well, looking at that comment section, it seems like some dudes really can't like handle it when there's like a woman in uniform or something. Like, how many people did we have to kick out? Oh, we had to kick out 20 dudes who just like couldn't handle it. Okay. Well, good to know in the future. Yeah. And I guess my favorite comment that I saw from the trolls was like, she's never. How could she talk about this stuff? She's never been in combat. It's like, neither of you, dude. Shut the fuck up. Like, what? It's just lame. It's like I wish these guys would surrender a certain level of toxic masculinity and just shut up and listen. And the thing is, like, yeah, people grow up heavily indoctrinated, and you can see the plight of another human's experience and begin to have that indoctrination unravel, which is why I bring people onto the show who grew up supporting Israel. It's like, oh, what's your transformative journey? Because this is like, if we're trying to speak out against a genocide, we're going to have to bring people over the fence, right? This is not going to happen anytime soon. So gatekeeping is really not helpful. And she was part of the war machine. I was part of the war machine. So like there's something you have to like get good with that. And like veterans, for better or for worse, have always been part of anti-war movements in America since the Vietnam War, which took 10 years of activism and direct action to end. And gatekeeping is not helpful for that. Yeah. So I just thought that the fact that was the first time we've actually really had to kick that many people off. I don't think we've ever had to like even come close. That was interesting. I think the comment section after this posts is going to be really crazy because I don't know. I guess some guys just can't handle like female Marine speaks out against like Israel or something. That's crazy. Just reminds me that like y'all need some therapy. All right, we got a lot of questions from this one, so let's start knocking them out. Breaking. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait have declared neutrality and will not allow the U.S. to use their air bases against Iran. Well, at least they won't publicly. Yeah, okay. So you guys know that the Gulf states and Iran have a complicated history. However, they are beholden to the West in a lot of ways. They want a seat at the table. This is incredibly reductive, but I will say that they've pulled similar moves in the past, like performative stances against a U.S. foreign policy. And they have the ability to resist it because we need them as allies in the region, or U.S. imperial interests are screwed. So, yes, they could say that. They could still let it happen privately. I know for a fact that's happened before. So, I don't really know, though, how they can make that statement and then have like U.S. planes drop bombs on Iranian installations and not have everybody in the world know about it. So I do think that actually is significant. Yeah. The more I think about it, yeah, because I just saw the headline break right before we started this live stream. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't trust Gulf state governments generally for obvious reasons, but it's a good, hopefully it's a step in the right direction to curtail U.S. and therefore Israeli impunity within the region, which causes so much death and destruction. Thanks, Danet. You also asked, have I changed my mind on if this is the beginning of World War III? Well, world wars, if we look at the history, don't just happen out of nowhere. It's not just like everything's fine one day and then everything blows up the next. No, there's a whole ramp up of political and military escalation. There's a series of small war, like World War II started off as like a continental war in Europe, and Imperial Japan was doing its own thing, and Mussolini and Franco were doing their own things, and then next thing you know, the whole world is involved. But there were phases where one country would get involved, then another country would get involved. The entire world didn't just light up in one conflagration. It was built over time. And I'm speaking really broad terms. So I guess if you're looking at this as like the prelude, or maybe we are already in World War III, we're just waiting for all the players to come in and start clashing. Maybe. Yeah. If you love 2024, you're going to love 2025. So depending on your perspective, yeah. The thing is, and this is why it's hard to predict, it's like what World War II looked like, it will never look like that again. The nature of warfare has changed. The global order that existed pre-World War II has completely changed. And if World War III happens and we survive it, the global order will look like something we can't even imagine right now. And then warfare after that would look like something we can't even imagine right now. So whatever World War III looks like, it's probably not going to look like World War I or World War II. So maybe we're already in it. Maybe I've seen some analysts call it like a cold World War III. It just doesn't seem like the like people in the West, policymakers in the West, are willing to like de-escalate or compromise when it comes to Israel, or compromise when it comes to Ukraine. I don't think they can back down, and I don't think they will back down. So it depends on how like some BRICS countries interact and what they decide to do. So have I changed my mind on this? If this is the beginning of World War III? Well, I've opened to I've more opened it to the possibility that this is the prelude or the opening moves, or perhaps, yeah, it's just the major players aren't actually fighting directly yet. If that makes sense. I'm still kind of forming my philosophy on it, but I will let you know, and I'll do a whole video. Thanks for that's a great question. I don't think, I'm actually not stoked. We're not de-escalating. Yeah, I think Israel has the strong possibility of going rogue with this Iran thing, and I guess we're going to back them to the hilt no matter what. Yeah. Okay, so this is one of the trolls I think that got kicked. Is that right, Jim? Just nod your head if that's true. Okay, yes, this is one of the trolls that get kicked. You're allowed to have flip-flops if you have a medical exemption, you tard. Well, that's kind of an outmoded insult. I guess it's making a comeback. Why are so many people, though, allowed to have medical exemptions? Is everybody sick? Does everybody have bad feet in the Israeli Defense Force? again, some people can't handle the fact that the IDF is an undisciplined conscript army that gets spanked routinely. So, Kat says, seems like a lot of trash turned up for this. I, again, already addressed this. Yeah, some trolls, some like incel dudes. Like this attracted all the incel dudes on the internet. Yeah, moving on. Okay, what? She legit did 3 weeks of logistics grunt work, saw some guys in flip-flops because of a medical exemption, and changed her entire worldview because of that. Well, I'm sad. It's kind of sad that that's all he gained from that. All right. It's really telling when you come up to get informed and instead have to see a bunch of people more concerned with denigrating a woman in the military than listening to her words. Yeah, that's a patriarchy for you. It's more just like sad incel guys that haven't talked to a girl in a long time, and they feel threatened by that. So they do keyboard warrior stuff. But yeah, would you expect anything less? Good point, though. Okay. Reuters, citing security sources, strike on suburb now bigger than the strike that killed Hassan Nasrallah. Well, we just heard Eric Prince use the adjective pancaked. They pancaked Beirut in order to get Nasrallah. So let me check the headline because this was breaking while the live stream was going on, huh? All right. Reuters. Beirut bombing. Oh, Christ. All right, well, hang on. We got something else. While we were all watching this, we've got this. U.S. discusses strikes on Iran oil sites as Israel presses Lebanon offensive. Okay, what? All right, the U.S. is discussing strikes on Iran's oil facilities as retaliation for Tehran missile attacks on Israel, President Joe Biden said on Thursday. He literally just said he wants a ceasefire. He literally just said he does not support Israel attacking Iranian nuclear sites. But now he's saying, being quoted, now Reuters is saying that President Joe Biden says they're talking about striking Iranian oil interests. While Israel's military pressed ahead with this campaign, we're discussing that, Biden told reporters. His comments contributed to a surge in global oil prices, obviously, because not only would Iranian oil be hit, the IRGC and the Iranian state-owned media have said, quoted the government as saying, as a policy position, if the United States is directly involved in any response protecting Israel, we will destroy United States oil assets in the Middle East, and they will shut down the Strait of Hormuz. In an election cycle, like a month before an election, having gas prices surge from war is like insane. Because like Joe Schmo, who doesn't understand anything about like geopolitics, is not dumb enough to know that this is Biden's fault, that he can't afford to get to work because he can't buy gas, because there's a senseless war in the Middle East, all because they couldn't rein in the rabid dog of Israel. There is nothing going to happen today, Biden said. He said the president said he would not support any Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites. So, yeah, all this is dumb. This is all so dumb. Yay, world. I would not be surprised. I will look up the Beirut bombing that just happened. But we're going to move on. Okay, this is a great question. Where and who are the elites in the Israeli military? Well, they have special operations units, which are supposed to be okay. I grew up in the U.S. Special Operations community system thing, and some of my buddies worked with Israeli special operations, and they said they weren't horrible. They were like, some guys are good because the special operations guys are actually professional soldiers, but they're like a very small portion of the Israeli Defense Force. How do they deal with a lack of discipline? Well, they don't. I would bet there's a lot of sexual assault within ranks. Yes, there's over 1/3 of women who serve in the IDF, which is pretty much like 1/3 of the Israeli population. No, it's not quite like that, but it's a way to conceptualize it. Have said they've self-reported on surveys saying that about like 1/3 to over 1/3 of women experience sexual harassment and assault while serving in the Israeli Defense Force. And those are just the ones who say they have. It's probably much higher. Just like when cops, 40% said on an open survey that, yes, I beat my wife and kids. Not all of them were saying that they did. It's probably higher than 40%. Yeah, and there have been cases of like rape and sexual assault where there's been a military tribunal and investigation within the IDF, and the case has been completely thrown out. Tons of examples. You can just Google it. Articles and articles on it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Shut up and listen, guys. She isn't promoting the IOF. She's explaining her negative experience with them. Yeah. None of this was promotional. Okay. But some people grow up indoctrinated, and it takes them some time to get out of it. And you should let them do it because they have unique experiences and unique voices that are harder for people to dismiss because of their backgrounds and upbringing. So we need all sorts of voices in this movement. So, yes. Female members of the diaper force make sexy videos to recruit more idiots. Yes, that's called a psyop. And I want to tell you, anyone who sees IDF girls, and the U.S. Army does this too, and so does the Marine Corps, has like sexy like 21, 23-year-old girls like dancing on TikTok or whatever. Look, don't do it, dude. Don't do it, bro. She's a psyop. She doesn't love you. She doesn't care about you. It's not worth your youth fighting for the imperial war machine. So this is worsening the crime. Yep, it is worsening the climate crisis too. You know what will really worsen the climate crisis? If we blow up all of Iran's oil fields and they start burning, and then Iran blows up our oil fields and they start burning. So that's something else to look forward to. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Ooh, what's your take on the recent attack in Syria? Why did Israel attack Russia? We're not sure that they did, but we are, and I'm not going to do this on this platform. I have another podcast called Colonial Outcast. We will be tackling this tomorrow as a hypothetical. It's completely hypothetical. This is why I wouldn't do it on Mint Press. So we'll be looking at that. Yes, let's see. Did the ground invasion go as bad as it did yesterday? You mentioned a blast that killed Golani Brigade soldiers. Yeah, well, we know for a fact that they walked into an H-bid, which is a house-borne IED. It's basically like you booby-trapped a house. And so they were either clearing it or they were setting up a command post inside of it, and then Hezbollah blew it up and killed all of them. So that's a pretty significant ambush operation with the H-bid, house-borne IED. Matt Miller's already said the USA won't negotiate with terrorists, which is laughable considering the USA are the biggest terrorist governments going. This means they were never serious about a ceasefire. No, they were never serious about a ceasefire. Nah. Didn't the U.S. Army fund some Hollywood movies once? Oh, not once. They're doing it now. They do it all the time. A lot of Hollywood scripts involving U.S. military equipment and U.S. military have to be cleared through the Pentagon to portray the U.S. Army in a certain light. That hasn't changed. So, yep, just to get more people to join. All right, guys, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming and watching this show. Hopefully it was informative and engaging. Screw all the trolls who can't handle that. We don't like incels around here. So see you next Monday. I'm not sure what it's going to be because we don't know what crazy stuff is happening this weekend. Hopefully we know it's going to be bad. So cheers, guys. I'll see you. But we will be here next week. So have as best of a weekend as you can and try to not lose your mind. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.